everybody, welcome back to my channel, Chatting with Chops. My name is Karen and I make fun and entertaining videos that might teach you something. Today we're going to make homemade orange cinnamon rolls and we're going to make them vegan. So basically all you need to do is take the egg out. It's a real easy transition to go from regular to vegan. So let's get started. So the first thing the recipe says for you to do is to dissolve your yeast in a half a cup of water, which I've already got that started so that we're not having to sit here and wait on that. Alright, so I think our yeast is about where it needs to be. So now we're going to add the orange zest into our bowl. Then orange juice, then the sugar, and it asks for 1/4 of a cup of sugar. And then salt. I normally do not ever put salt in our recipes except for when it has to do with bread. For some reason, bread needs salt in order to do what it needs to do. So it's the only time that I add salt to my recipes. And then it asks for 1 large egg, which again, in order to make it vegan, we use 4 ounces of just regular unsweetened applesauce. And then the butter, which is plant-based butter. And then 1½ cups of flour. Get the measurement just right. Bread likes to have more exact numbers. And then it says beat everything on low, so we're going to do that. We'll probably leave that for 4 or 5 minutes just to make sure that everything gets mixed in real well. Alright, so that's been mixing for 3 or 4 minutes, and now it's basically asking for 1½ to 2 more cups of flour. So I'm going to just put this in as halves just so that I can see how things are going. Alright, so now the recipe is asking you to just basically knead this for about 5 or 6 minutes just to get everything worked in and nice. Alright, so you have kneaded your dough for 5 or 6 minutes, and now it basically tells you that you need to put it in a greased bowl. I don't really know any bread or dough recipe that you don't have to put it in a greased bowl when you're done. So you basically get it all nice and pretty and round, and then drop it down in your bowl and flip it once so that it basically gets that grease all over it. And then take your cloth, cover it up, and this recipe says he needs to sit for 1.5 hours and just rise. So I'll see you back in about 1.5 hours. Alright, so we have left our wonderful dough to sit and do its thing. And the next step for the recipe is to basically take a 9 by 13 baking dish and put parchment paper down in it so it's ready when you go to put your cinnamon rolls in. So we've done that. And then you're going to take and make your filling next. And again, I'm using plant butter, plant-based butter, but you use 1/4 cup of butter. Just plop that in there. And then you want to use, let's see, 1/4 cup of sugar. So put that in there. And then it says to use 2 teaspoons of ground cinnamon. My family really likes cinnamon, so we always kind of overdo the cinnamon. So I usually double it, whatever it is. But now definitely, if you're not a huge cinnamon lover, then you should not do that. Okay. And then it just says that you're supposed to mix it in. And I had let my butter sit at room temperature, so it was much easier to work with. Since you have to kind of sit and wait for it to, your dough to rise anyway, this is something that you can do while you're waiting. And you see mine is very, very dark, and it's just because of all the cinnamon that I've put into it. But again, you can make it as light or as heavy on the cinnamon as you want to. Okay, so we kind of got that squared away. So I'm going to set that off to the side. And now is when we're going to get our dough out and roll him out. Okay, so that's what he looks like. Isn't he nice and pretty? Okay, so you just want to have a nice floured surface and roll him out. Loud bang. Make sure you've got some flour on your hands and just give him a good roll around. And then the recipe basically says to take a rolling pin and roll it out to a particular size, which I don't always roll it out to the exact size they're looking for. I just try and get it as nice and square as possible, since you're going to be making some beautiful cinnamon rolls out of them. Just get that to be nice and square. So you've got that all nice and pretty. Just flop it over to make sure it's not sticking to the countertop. Alright, now at this point you want to take your cinnamon mixture and just basically put that all along your cinnamon rolls. And mine is super thick, so you might have to, definitely going to have to make some more, because I have made mine a little too thick. So see, that's where you learn to experiment. Alright. Alright, so I showed you what you have when you put 2 teaspoons of cinnamon and slightly soft butter and 1/4 cup of sugar. Now I'm showing you what it looks like when you have actually melted the butter and put only 2 teaspoons of cinnamon and 1/4 cup of sugar. So it's a little bit more runny. And again, my channel, this is not professional baking. This is experimental, fun, entertaining, beginner baking, see what happens kind of thing. So now I'm just going to kind of brush this on to the rest of the cinnamon roll. And you see just how much thinner it is when it's actually, the butter has been melted. You just basically get that on there. And you want to get it pretty much as close to the edges as possible, because every little bite, you want plenty of cinnamon sugar taste to be in each bite. So just make sure you get it kind of, so to speak, painted on. And you can pretty much use whatever you want to put this on. I'm just using a pastry brush because I think it works the best for what I'm usually doing. Alright, so we've pretty much used up every little bit of that. And again, my family really likes cinnamon, so this will be a nice addition for them. Alright, now at this point is when you want to start rolling it up to make your actual cinnamon roll. And this is when it starts to get a little bit interesting too, because you just have to just start at the edges and just start rolling. And you see my cinnamon roll mixture on the end there is a little bit wet, so we might have some fun figuring out how to keep that in, or it might just get really, really messy in just a minute. Okay, so the recipe basically says you're supposed to take a knife to cut it, but I have read somewhere that dental floss works really well. And of course you want some good clean dental floss. I'm trying to make sure you get any excess flour off of there, because nobody wants to eat raw flour. And this is basically just a dental floss case that I keep in the kitchen for these specific purposes. If I can get it to come open. Alright, so you just take a nice good piece of dental floss and slide it under the dough, and then just basically decide what size cinnamon rolls you're looking for, and it'll cut right into it. And then you set those down on your aluminum foil or your parchment paper. I always say the first couple, once you start figuring out what size you want and things like that, can always be a little bit tricky. Just take that, put this down in the, and you just keep going until you've gone through the whole loaf, so to speak. From here, now we just cover them back up and let them sit for about an hour, let them rise again, and then they'll be ready to bake. We're about to put them in the oven for 365 degrees for anywhere between 25 and 40 minutes. Well, here is the finished product, and y'all can definitely see the difference between the two. This is the top part where it was almost the cinnamon type paste. And then here's the bottom where I melted the butter instead of just letting it room temperature. And you see how it really kind of ran out and had a ball. Now I'm sure they'll taste just as good as the others do, but they just got a little bit more runny. So now we're going to make the glaze that goes on top. And the recipe asks for orange juice, and it asks for, of course, more orange zest. And really you can put as much or as little as you want to make it as, orangey as you want it to be. And then you put in 1 teaspoon of vanilla extract. And then the last ingredient is your cup of confectionery sugar. And the recipe does say, though, that if your glaze is a little too thick, that you can thin it out with more orange juice. But I don't know yet because I want to get it mixed in and see how it's going to go. On my cinnamon rolls, I actually made 18. I don't evenly cut mine, so sometimes they make a little bit more and sometimes they make a little bit less. And I'm sure that there's a really great way to put the glaze on top of the cinnamon rolls, but I usually just pour it on. But if y'all have any suggestions, please put them down at the bottom of a better way to put the glaze on the top. I mean, I'm sure you could probably like brush it on, but I just like to drizzle it over the top and just kind of let it run down. I've let them cool for about 5 minutes. Sometimes if you try and put glaze or icing on cinnamon rolls right away, all it does is just melt them down to the bottom of the pan and you don't get to enjoy your glaze. Alright, so basically what that's going to do is that glaze is going to just soak right in to the cinnamon rolls and just make them that much more orangey. But there is the finished product. The orange cinnamon rolls. And I hope you enjoy. Please like and subscribe and put any comments or suggestions of future bakes that you'd like to have down in the comments below. And I'll see you next time.